Part 2 of the France 24 debate. What happens to Brazil if and seemingly when President Dilma Rousseff gets impeached? Her political fate is now in the hands of the Senate, which has to give a final decision on the impeachment that was approved by the lower house of Congress overnight. With me to talk about this today, Marcia Bechara, Andre Neto, Stefan Witkowski, and Alfredo Valadao. Just before we get into what might come after for Brazil, I want to ask you about Dilma Rousseff and her chances of political survival. Is there any chance that the Senate votes against impeachment? Marcia?
There is a very interesting thing about this because for the first time in Brazilian history, we are going to qualify this debate. It's the first time that the impeachment goes to the Senate.
Yeah.
Because at the 1992, we didn't go there. So
the president resigned before the motion could go through.
I think I'm optimistic about this because this is certainly going to qualify the debate. You know, we are not going to see, I hope, the kind of arguments that we saw last night.
But what about her chances in the Senate? She needs just 1/3 of senators against impeachment to survive this. Is she going to get them?
According
what do we
to
know?
The projections of my newspaper, the impeachment thesis has already 42 votes, about 42 votes. It means more than
half. The 2/3. More than half.
More than half for the moment. Let's see what happens in the coming days.
Which would mean she would survive the impeachment motion?
To be honest, I don't think so. I don't think so. But just to clarify my position, I agree actually with Valadão when he say it's not a coup d'etat. I don't like this expression to explain the whole process. I don't like neither the idea of an impeachment because in my point of view, the Brazilian scenario is too unstable and the democracy is still too young in Brazil to face this kind of proof we are facing now, and I'm just worried about the future.
I think Dilma's survival will depend a lot on the political situation at the end of this process, because we should never forget that an impeachment process is a political process in the Constitution. It's not a judicial process.
But how can she turn things around in her favor? She's got less than 10% approval ratings.
It's going to be extremely difficult. I don't think I agree with my friend here that it's going to be extremely difficult, that she won't survive it.
But what can she do?
But no, it depends, because right now, before this impeachment process in the lower chamber, you saw a lot of people trying to sell ministries, etc. We have a corrupt political class.
There was a lot of bargaining going on for those votes in Congress.
A lot of things. So we don't know how this thing, and we don't know. The Lula has already said that he's going to go to the streets. Even social movements linked to the PT are saying that they want to go to war in the street. So we don't know what's going to happen in the ring, because it's a long way, 6 months for deciding.
Well, it may not last, just to be clear, it may not last 6 months because
may not last, but it may last.
Let me make sure we all agree on this. Step one, Senate has to decide whether or not it is going to hear the motion on impeachment. It is more than likely that Senate will give the green light to vote on impeachment.
Exactly.
After that, once that happens, Dilma Rousseff must step down for up to 6 months, during which time she will be replaced by her vice president, Michel Temer, and the Senate has 6 months to decide whether or not to impeach her. But it is expected the Senate will decide much more quickly than that 6-month deadline.
It will be in May, probably.
We believe it could happen next month.
15, yeah, in May.
No, in May they will decide to.
So step one.
The vote to put the process inside. But then they have six months to decide if they really impeach Dilma or not.
Of course, but Michel Temer can.
Oh no, Michel Temer can take it immediately.
Exactly.
He can push through the vote.
His government very quickly.
Yes,
very quickly.
He can do that,
and he can change the political economic quickly. So
Alfredo was talking about. I need to hear you on this. Alfredo was talking about the potential for unrest in the street, that the Labour Party can bring masses of people down in the street.
It's a possibility.
How worrisome is this for Brazil when we're talking about unrest? How bad could it get?
It's difficult to say, but I think that there is possibility in the Senate also. We cannot exclude completely.
possibility of what?
Yeah, of impeachment. It could be avoided also.
So she may survive the impeachment vote in Senate.
And after Senate, there is the Supreme Tribunal also.
Yeah.
She can ask for appeal there.
Yes, but this is a problem because if you can appeal an impeachment decision from the chamber to the Supreme Tribunal, you have a crisis of separation of powers, because that would
But this
mean
crisis
that
is already there.
No.
Because it means that the Supreme Tribunal will be over the legislative branch, and so this is one of the problems. When there was an appeal at the last moment from the PT on the chamber vote, the Supreme Court, 8 of the 10 Supreme Justices, said no, we don't want that. For exactly this reason, we cannot intrude in the prerogatives of the legislative branch.
Yes, but in fact, I couldn't say exactly that it's a coup d'état institutional. It's possible to qualify it. But that's right, there is a real debate in Brazil about the legal basis about this impeachment. Cannot say that it's not.
But now that it's
a
now
real
that it's
problem. If you heard the Attorney General, President Friday.
now that that's happening and that we've decided it's a political process when we all agree on that, I want to move beyond that and again bring you back to this idea of what can Dilma Rousseff do to survive this? She has to engineer, politically speaking, a situation where she can survive this. So what does she have to do? Does she have to offer money, laws, jobs to senators in order to get the votes she needs?
Yes, exactly that. But it's not her anymore. No. It's Lula who's doing all this thing.
That's right.
And Lula is not even a minister. Lula is a private citizen. He's doing that from a hotel room in Brasilia. So this is also a very strange thing.
But
what is his leverage? How much pull does he have? Lula, as you say, is no longer president. How much leverage does he have to influence this situation?
It's important to understand that all these measures are already being tried for the last few weeks and even months.
They tried and failed.
And I don't see any reason why this could happen differently during the discussions in Senate. But it's important to remember that even though the Workers' Party today is considering to call for new elections, so there are many different cards on the table, and we have to wait a couple of days or even weeks to see clearly what can happen in the coming months in Brazil. But the fact that we are discussing if it's a coup or not, what can happen.
Let's move beyond that.
Everything shows us the fact that this is a complex situation, difficult to understand and difficult to explain to the Brazilian public opinion that doesn't have necessarily the maturity, the democratic maturity to understand what is happening in this day.
But when we have 37 of the politicians of the Special Commission of the Lower House of the Chamber of Deputies, they are implicated in corruption affair. 37 of the 65.
37 out of 65.
When the president of the Brazilian Congress, Eduardo Cunha, is inside approved affair of bribery of 40 million from the Swiss banks.
He's accused of money laundering and corruption to the tune
40 million.
Yes.
And it's already proved.
Did you say 40?
40
or
million
50 millions
dollars.
Yeah.
Okay, the president of the council that was seated yesterday, just managing the cards and asking for. And
he's the one who's leading the
you,
impeachment charge against Dilma Rousseff.
Yes, and also I ask you, which crime was proved about Dilma Rousseff? Which crime?
It's not a judicial process.
Yes, it is also. We are inside the democracy, a legal one. It should be. And there is no crime proof. That's why I insist.
Jurists say there is crime.
At least. The oppositional judge.
No,
yes.
no.
Yes.
Yes, and so if the government
there is
judges say no, and the
no.
opposition
There is
says
no
yes, so
consensus
who?
about it. I'm so sorry.
Yes, but why?
That's why I insist. That is that's my personal position. That's only it. But there is at least an institutional coup d'état going on in Brazil. I really believe on this.
Tell me now about Michel Temer. He has played. You told me about the Speaker of the House, Eduardo Cunha. Michel Temer is the Brazilian vice president. Until last month, he was a political ally of Dilma Rousseff and of and he had been ruling as part of a coalition with the Labour Party. Now Michel Temer, along with Eduardo Cunha, is leading the charge against Dilma Rousseff, and he's the one who stands to become acting president if Dilma Rousseff is forced to step down.
Already, he is already cited. He's inside the Odebrecht list of corruption and bribes. His name is there.
He's
The
also
list-
accused of corruption.
Yes, the famous list that the Brazilian press trying to close up.
So the
Well-
Speaker of the
well
House
prepared
accused
to
of
solve
corruption, the Vice President accused of corruption, a
But the most
majority of
important
congressmen
question,
accused of
the most
corruption.
why are they trying to stop this situation? Because they want to stop car wash operation. Of course,
Yeah,
they
that's the
want,
investigation into the
they want to
Petrobras corruption
stop the
scandal.
investigation before this come.
We can't be naive. All political parties are trying to stop.
Of course, I know it. But
car
when I
wash
see Michel Temer
investigations.
and Eduardo Cunha leading
Just a
this
moment,
process,
Marcia, let's remember that 3 weeks ago, Dilma Rousseff asked Lula to come back to power in order to protect him.
do you
in jail.
really
Shield
think
him from
so?
prosecution,
Do you
absolutely.
really think so to protect him? I
Of
think.
course,
oh,
of course, I
of
think.
course.
Of course. I'm
Okay.
100%
There seemed to be a wide consensus on that.
oui. Like, consensus is something very difficult in this kind of situation. You know, I prefer the debate.
My question is there anyone who is clean in Brazil? Is there a new figure who can emerge from this?
There are some political, yes, young political. There are some people that I don't know about you, Andre, and Valadão, and you, but I think about the young guys like Jean Willis of PSOL. I think about Fernando Haddad, the actual, the mayor, how do I say it in English, of São Paulo. Fernando Haddad is a good name. Marcelo Freixo from Jandira Fegali, the Communist Party of Brazil. There's some
The
people.
reason I ask this question, and tell me if I'm being naive here, is that in any other political context, when you have a majority of the ruling political elite that is either accused of being corrupt or proved to have been corrupt, normally what would happen is you would have a new, fresh figure who would come to the front of the political stage and take power just on a wave of anger and people being fed up at the political elite. And I don't see that happening here.
all the names that Marcia just mentioned, I'm sorry to say, but they don't have the stature to.
No, they don't have yet. He's
become-
right.
to
They
become-
don't have the
They're not potential heads of state yet.
no, not
No,
yet.
there's one person that maybe could represent something different in the political scenario nowadays. That is Marina Silva. She had
was a
about
rival.
20 million votes in the 2 previous elections. So there is a kind of legitimacy around her. But she just came to create a new party. We don't know the program. We don't know their ideas.
Yeah.
They don't have the support at the chamber. So what could be the...
She was a
deep-
rival to
our-
Dilma Rousseff during the
our
last
deep-
presidential election and did surprisingly well.
Our deep problem is that it's true that the whole system, political system, melted, but there, for the time being, there is no alternative.
There's no alternative.
All the young leaders are not strong enough to represent all this. So we will have to go through, like it or not, because this is our country, we have to go through a transition that can be a long transition. So if Michel Temer takes the presidency, he's an old, shrewd, fox politician. If he can rise to become more or less a statesman, he can maybe manage a transition that would be smooth enough so that things don't get really bad.
Transition towards what?
A transition to another phase, leaving time for a new generation to come up, new leaders to come up, because we need new parties, new leaders, and a new political system.
I'm talking short term. The next presidential election is 2018,
18.
2 years from now.
Nobody knows what's going to happen, because there's one thing we are forgetting. Now, in October, we're going to have municipal elections, which are very important
Absolutely.
in Brazil. So all these politicians are already making themselves and fighting to get this. In São Paulo, a third of the mayors of the PT in São Paulo went out of the PT because they're afraid to lose the election. And probably the PT is going to be clobbered in these elections. So how all this works in all the calculus of all these people, we don't know.
And that was going to be my question. What's the calculus of the vice president? He decided to turn on his longtime political ally, Dilma Rousseff, and now Michel Temer is poised to become acting president. He could have the reins of power in Brazil for the next 2 years. What does that do for he's 75 years old. Is he looking to be the next president of Brazil, be elected in 2018?
Nobody knows.
Well, last time he leaked. There was an audio nowadays in Brazil.
Yeah, he leaked his platform in case he were to become president.
Yes, just like this.
He did it in purpose.
Of course, he did it in purpose. It's horrible.
And by the way, the business lobbies seem to like Michel Temer. He's in favor in those leaked policies. He was arguing in favor of fiscal austerity,
more or less,
And
privatizations,
the oil lobby.
That's right.
More or less, because Michel Temer is alongside Dilma in another judicial procedure.
He could face impeachment himself.
He could face impeachment, but for another reason, and Dilma could face a second impeachment for another reason, which is that they made illegal moves to be reelected. Both they were both in the same thing. So I'm not so sure. And the business community were very much pro Dilma. Lula said they never made so much money than when I was president. This was Lula who said.
But each time Dilma Rousseff gets a step closer to impeachment, the markets go up and react positively. Markets want her out.
But the Brazilian Federation of Industry, etc.,
business leaders,
they started becoming anti-Dilma only at the end, because for a long time they were there and working, because the business people in Brazil, they live on subsidies and protection, so they're always with the government.
But it's important to say that they are financing the whole.
Again with Lula.
Yes, they were very happy with Lula.
But
The industry is financing the whole proceeding nowadays. Demonstrations and etc. Yeah,
the impeachment drive,
the whole impeachment proceeding.
As they financed the Lula
has
things,
been financed by
This is the problem.
Economic power in Brazil. So we have to face the reality.
But I'd like to ask an important question. I don't know what you think about this, but why are these men, these congressmen, they are so mad about Dilma Rousseff? Why? And I have some
You have some ideas.
possibilities I would like to share with you, and you're going to tell me if what you think about it. Well, in July 2015, she was against the salary increase proposition for the judiciary public servers. They were pissed off. In September 2015, she positioned herself against the private financing of political campaigns, defended by Gilmar Mendes, a Supreme Court judge. She has created and implemented the so-called Comissão da Verdade, the Truth Commission, to properly investigate torture crimes. And the final recommendations strongly irritated the Romanian torturers.
All right, hold on. I think we get the idea. Let me interrupt you. You're saying that she took away some of the financial and political privileges that the political elite.
She has positioned herself against the financing of political campaigns. Okay, September 2015. You make just little research, Google.com. You're going to see it.
No. The Workers' Party have been financed by the economic power for the last 15 years.
Of all the parties in Brazil, yes. But
all right,
September
you cannot
2015.
ignore the fact that the Workers' Party has been part of the whole system.
Of course, I don't say this, Andre.
Don't say something that can be.
I'm just saying that she has positioned herself in September 2015.
Dilma is not a saint.
Of course, I don't believe in saints. For God's sake.
Dilma is a disaster for the Brazilian economy and for the Brazilian stability of the political system.
I'm sorry, man, I do not agree with you, but okay.
I'm sorry to say that, but
it's
I
nice
don't
to
have
talk
many
about it.
doubts about the
Well,
responsibility
the
of
Brazilian
Dilma.
economy has crashed under her stewardship.
Of course, but she can't work. There is one after the second election, 2014, she is completely blocked. I think that she has many problems. For example, she has no political ability, just like former president. Of course, she has made extremely wrong choices. But she can't work since October 2014. She's completely blocked. You know what? This Congress is the most conservative Congress since
the economy had begun to
64.
nosedive before that.
Yes,
a lot before that. At the end of the first year of Dilma had an 80% good opinion in
approval
the
rating.
polls, and then the economy went down the drain with some terrible decisions that were made, and that the economy is just nosediving for the last 4 years. And then the corruption scandal in Petrobras. She was also the director of Petrobras when the scandals were there. So,
But also Fernando Henrique, the last government.
so what? She was there. Fernando Henrique was president.
It's not her privilege.
20 years ago. It's not because the others. This is one of the arguments of the PT. We are doing that because all the others have done it
No,
before.
of
But the
course
PT
not.
has always said that they would want to change the country, that
right.
they were pure and saints, etc. They were not.
they never.
So what is the problem now is that it's the whole system that has crashed.
This
So
I agree with you.
How
This
can we
I completely
go
agree with
forward
you.
with that?
All right. I'd like to thank all our guests for joining us on the France 24 debate this evening. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for now. There's a lot more to be said about Brazil. And honestly, I'm pretty sure we're going to see you all again here, especially to follow all the steps of this impeachment procedure. And there will be several more, including this going to the Senate for a vote. Thank you very much for following us here on the France 24 debate. Thank you for all our guests for joining us here this evening.
Thank you.
James Creedon joins us on set for Media Watch. James, you've been scouring the internet, the media, social media. What do you have for us?
Well, a lot of comments on the major news websites reflecting some of the thoughts we've been hearing this evening, Cyril. The New York Times, first of all, has been interviewing various people with opinions on this, such as Lincoln Secco, a professor of history at the University of Sao Paulo, saying that this is setting a very dangerous precedent. The grounds for impeachment are very dubious. It's putting a very large bullet in Brazilian democracy from his point of view. This will set a precedent because any moment we have a highly unpopular president from now on, there will be pressure to start an impeachment process. The Economist, which has been very much in favour of Dilma Rousseff going, even The Economist has been saying that in the absence of proof of criminality, impeachment is unwarranted and it looks like a pretext for ousting an unpopular president. So even if they don't like her, they don't particularly like her policies, they don't necessarily think that the grounds for impeachment are very stable. On social media, really a huge amount of opinion thinks that this is simply a pretext. It's a conspiracy of sorts. This meme here says, "End of corruption," but you can see that it is a rather corrupt bunch shouting it. Characters from the Austin Powers movie, notably Dr. Evil, not exactly symbols of morality themselves. So a lot of that, and The Guardian actually catalogues some of those who voted in favour of her impeachment yesterday in Brasilia. Yes, voted Paulo Maluf, who is on Interpol's red list for conspiracy. Yes, voted Nilton Capichipa, who is accused of money laundering. For the love of God, yes, declared Silas Camara, who is under investigation for forging documents and misappropriating public funds. You get the picture that, from The Guardian's point of view, they're perhaps not in the best position to be wagging the finger. To pick up again on the idea that this is in some way a coup or a conspiracy, fueling those ideas is the fact that one Senator, Aloisio Nunes, of the PSDB party, he is going to undertake 3 days of meetings in Washington next week, fueling speculation that the US is quietly quite happy to see these proceedings, or to see Dilma Rousseff move to one side, who has been moving more towards trade agreements with China, and also just a little bit more left-wing than they might like. So in any case, there is quite a degree of speculation that these meetings, that it might fuel the idea that it is indeed in some way being supported by the US, either outwardly or secretly. So lots of speculation, I suppose, is the main way of summing it up.
All right, James Creedon with Media Watch, thank you very much. You'll get a lot more from James throughout the evening here live from Paris on France 24. Thanks, James. Thanks to all our guests for joining us on the debate. Do stay tuned. That's it from us. We take a very short break, and in just a moment, another edition of World News live from Paris.